Hey, good evening, everyone. This is Robert with Mr. Texas Real Estate, and we're going to talk tonight about the rising costs of holding properties. So this is our Red Talks, real estate discussions, and we got a panel of experts up here that are going to help us understand why our cash flow is shrinking. So why don't you guys introduce yourself? We'll start here with Trey.
Trey Waldhauser, managing member for the Texas Property Management Company.
Excellent.
Janice Mayes-Clayton. I'm the managing agent for Mayes-Clayton Group Insurance.
David Nettles, Nettles and Company Property Tax Consulting.
Excellent. So these guys are experts. They deal in this stuff every single day. And why don't you tell us what your interactions mostly are with landlords? Trey, you go last because you probably have the most. But David, let's start with you.
Ours is pretty simple. We go in, we protest your property taxes every year. I get a lot of people that tell me this time of year they don't need to protest them. They've stayed the same. And my issue with that is if the government's not increasing or decreasing them, it's because there is a decrease there somewhere to be had. And they will raise them more than likely. They will not voluntarily decrease them. So we're trying to always look at the bottom line for you. Taxes is the biggest part of what your profits are. You know, it takes away from a lot of it. You're looking at 2 to 3% tax rate, some even higher, depending on if there's a MUD involved. Insurance is taking a bunch of it. Everybody's taking a piece out of it. And at the end of the day, you've got to try to minimize everything that you're doing all the way through, getting the right insurance, getting the right property tax valuations, and showing your property and what it really is. Appraisals are done on a mass appraisal system. They don't know what your property is worth. They will not buy the property for what they've valued it at. So I love that one. I love that email when it comes in. Well, they should buy my property for that. The government doesn't buy anything, and if they do, they buy it at a very discounted rate. So, this time of year is the best time for me to sit down and talk with new clients or old clients and discuss that. Here we are, we're in October, and the properties that you've got, let's start evaluating what repairs need to be done to them. Let's make sure that you've got your correct P&L and everything lined up right so that we can really evaluate if the property is done on an income statement or if it's done on a cost approach. And we want to really look at the condition of it. And because the valuation is set January the 1st of every year, not when they come out with a new value in March, April, or May. And so people want to come to us in those times and say, well, here's the condition of the property, but we fixed all this stuff last year. Okay, well, do you have any pictures of it? Nope, we got a picture of it nice and beautiful now. Well, I need the ugliest pictures that you have. I mean, I really do. I want to see the ugliest thing that you can possibly show me about your property, because that's what differentiates your property from the others that are beautiful, that are selling for way above market prices. And so we have to look at it. And it's like you call the property manager and you say, hey, get me a bid. I'm not going to replace the air conditioner right now. It's not really in the budget, but in October, November, December, start working on getting a bid for a new AC, new heating unit, new ductwork, foundation repair, roof repair, things of that nature, so that you have them and they're current based on the end of year, so that when somebody's protesting the taxes, they can get a reduction for you. And that's a big part of it. But keeping the books clean is also very nice for us as well. You know, when I'll leave it at that, but just keep them clean. So, yeah, but I'm glad to be here tonight and looking forward to y'all's questions.
Excellent.
And I want to see your best pictures. No, because if I'm going to sell your property to an underwriter, then I need to make sure that we've got the very best foot forward. And one of the things that we want to do is make sure that your replacement cost analysis is in line for the property only. So often I get requests for insurance amounts that are including land value, including fences that would be less than the deductible to replace. So don't pay all these dollars year after year after year on insurance that they're never going to cover because it's land value. And we see that so often, particularly at loan closings or refinancing, and we have to kind of butt heads a little bit with some of the lenders to explain that we're not insuring land. It's not going to happen. And here's the reason why, and they generally will back down. We've got about 300 carriers, so we're constantly shopping those prices. We want to make sure that you're in the best place. We want you properly insured, but certainly not over-insured. They're not going to write you out a check for more than the replacement cost on your multifamily or your single family or apartment complex or whichever. And so we're very proactive in constantly looking for ways to save you money, and also to do a little bit of claims discussion before claims are filed. Always have a conversation with your agent before moving forward with a claim. Make sure you're not going to get a zero payout, but we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. So anyway.
Excellent. Well, where do I begin? I talk to investors about all kinds of things, the good and the bad. So as the property manager, tenants break things, and I and my team have to reach out to you and let you know what's going on. If the numbers aren't working for you, we got to dig into it and find out why it's not working. The thing I try to save you from is that 2 a.m. phone call with the toilet that's broken. And I don't know. There's so many things that we do, Rob. I mean, where do you go?
Yeah. So we personally use Trey because first of all, he's not the cheapest.
Yeah, definitely.
And because once we understood actually how property management worked, we realized nobody's making any money on it. They're just building a business to sell.
Yep.
That was our first question to these guys. Are you selling your business? They're like, no. Like, oh, okay, good. But we use them, and we'll get into, cause I want you, let's talk, we're going to get right into the price hike. So Tell us about your virtual assistant squeeze when she squeezed you for like $15 or something like that.
Yeah.
So that was just labor was a portion.
Yeah.
Like you've got people working for you, right?
Yeah. So I have multiple teams to handle, all the aspects of covering property management. So we've got an accounting team, we've got an entire maintenance team, we've got a resident services team. We haven't gotten to the sales and marketing yet, but that's coming down the pipeline. So when any business owner knows, payroll is your biggest expense, flat out. And so 2 years ago, you could hire somebody to sit at the front desk, answer phones, and it was going to cost you $10 an hour. That same person is $20 an hour now. So that is a huge hit. The virtual assistants that you hire are global team members, as they like to be called, that you hire from the Philippines or Mexico or wherever. 2 years ago, those guys were $6 an hour. They're now 12 to 15. So prices for labor have skyrocketed.
Did she squeeze you on a Friday afternoon or something like that?
She's tried to squeeze me multiple times and finally let her know, like, this is the price. You're welcome to stay or go.
So on insurance, my question is, so we saw a big leap in insurance costs this year. Is it a I'm assuming it's never one thing, it's always a combination thing, but is it a combination of sort of pent up COVID numbers and we just didn't do that during COVID? Is it a price squeeze? Is it inflation? Is it all the above and people just saying, hey, the market's rough, let's take advantage?
It is all of the above.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I think has also helped drive this is there are several carriers that have just decided to pull out of Harris County and the counties that are also coastal counties, Tier 1, across Texas. Some of that is due to claims. Some of it is some of the investors that were coming into Harris County reach their market shares. You see that quite often as the year goes by. I've got a carrier that sent a memo the 1st of September is we don't want any more new business until after October 1st. I have another one that says we don't want any more new business in Harris County until January 1st. And what they're doing is readjusting the footprint that they have in the various counties. We're not seeing that across the entire state of Texas, but certainly across the southern half and in our area. We write in a dozen or so states, and we're seeing some of that across all of the industry. It's not that unusual, but I do attribute a lot of it to we did not see that during COVID. The other is legitimately people are pouring into Harris County in particular, and with that, the claims rise. I think some of it also is just not claims management, where you are seasoned investors. There's a lot of people that are not investors at all, but they are contributing to that because they'll file claims that are either should never have been filed, or they will, and certainly some of them are just completely bogus, but many of them just should not have been filed from an economic standpoint. You've got to measure the deductible and measure how many years that's going to be counted against you on your clue report and all these different factors. And instead, they call that 1-800 number and ask, I'm missing a shingle on my roof. Should I file a claim? You just filed a claim with a zero payout. And so you can lose these 0 to 3 year claims discounts, 5 year, but it counts as a claim. And so when actuaries are running all that data, then you're seeing what numbers look like, and that reflects in premium. So does that answer your question?
No, that's excellent. I want to dig a little deeper with you too.
Okay.
So, and maybe David, you have a good understanding. What is you have a rule of thumb as of building opposed to the land value? Is it 60-40? Is it 70-30? Or is everything different?
Everything's different.
Everything's different.
I mean, you're talking about your house in Cypress versus if it was located in Malibu Beach.
Yeah.
What's the contributing factor to make the difference in the value? The dirt
So
in
how would
Malibu. The dirt in Malibu is worth.
Yeah. So it's location.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest deal. I mean, you know, for us, we work across the state, so we're looking at valuations from your stuff down in Port Aransas to homes in Dallas, Laredo, El Paso, McAllen, Houston, Beaumont.
David, when we refer to Port Aransas, we like to call it the Texas Riviera.
I understand. I understand. But
He threw you off.
I know he did. He was going for it. But there's just you can't.
Sure, the sticks are sticks, right?
Yeah, I mean, and she's the same way. I mean, she's going to ride on a Marshall and Swift, or we're going to be pretty much right on the numbers with the improvements. We take it, we build the property up, and then we depreciate it down, and we get you a pretty fair number on what it's going to be at. Be it if it's commercial, residential, whatever, the dirt's going to be the outlier, and that's really where we're at. You know, or maybe depending on the age of the house or whatever, there may be some other things that are going to change, you know. Whereas,
Well, the finishes on the house are also a huge factor. If you walk in and you've got marble from front to back on the floor, that's going to be vastly different than luxury vinyl.
Yeah.
You know, and so all of those things are factors.
I mean, we can compare River Oaks to Tanglewood and look at just simple differences there. I mean, you're looking at two of the wealthiest neighborhoods in town, and as wealthy as they are, they're night and day different.
Sure.
So it's just.
Well, it's one of the reasons why it's important to do or have your insurance broker run your replacement cost analysis every year. And also when you're working with David, it's important to know what the valuation on that property is from a replacement cost, because unlike any other entity, the only thing an insurance company cares about is what is the replacement cost. What check do they need to write out if something catastrophic occurs? And in doing that, we run those replacement cost analysis at least annually, and I've even taken the step of having people sign off on them, investors and homeowners sign off on them. And part of the reason for that is that people tend to think that I paid X number of dollars for something, I have this much money in it, so that's all that should be valued at. And sometimes that's okay, but oftentimes it's not. And we need to make sure that that number is in line with the replacement cost or within 90% of the replacement cost. Otherwise, you can face an actual cash value penalty, if you will. If there's a claim and you're significantly underinsured, under 90% of value, then you face penalties whenever they're coming back in to settle the claim, which can go to actual cash value. And on an older home, that's extremely important. We've seen it a few times, not in our agency because we do replacement cost analysis vividly or religiously, but you want to make sure that you're properly insured. And in the last 2.5 years, we've seen building costs climb so staggeringly, and what, to your point of labor, along with that, if you haven't looked over your own home insurance, you are probably underinsured more than likely on a replacement cost basis.
We look at it every year.
Yeah, it's extremely important.
Do you look at it, and just to go with everybody else out here, so on the policy it has replacement value, and then it has, help me with the lingo on there, but also to current standards. Because a house that was built in 1956 is not built the same way.
Right,
as a
it's
2022.
ordinance coverage.
Okay.
Right, and a lot of carriers will offer something, you'll see it on your policy often, and not often on your dwelling policy without it being an add-on. On a homeowner's, it's fairly standard. On a dwelling policy, we generally will put that in the replacement cost analysis rather than on a line item. On a homeowner's, it's generally 10% of the top line of the value. On a dwelling, we put on an investment property, we generally put that in the dwelling coverage or in the building coverage if it's a multifamily or an apartment building, is how we generally handle that. But it's carrier by carrier. Some of them have different nuances that they like to just handle that a little bit differently. And so,
Interesting. Do you make our renters have rental insurance?
We're forcing it when we get into Appfolio, yes.
But it's not an expensive policy, right?
not at all. Not at all. Usually it's under 300 for like 25,000 in coverage, 300,000 on liability, basic coverage.
Gotcha.
And so,
It's in our release, but oftentimes what happens is they'll pay it and then they'll stop paying.
Of course, yes.
and most carriers won't list a property manager as a notification point for the policy, so you really don't know unless they paid it annually.
David, can you actually go through the logistics of what you actually have to do? I actually hired someone who said, I know him. I used to do this file work. And she says it was from sometimes it was from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m, gathering all the data. So I didn't realize how much behind the scenes stuff there was. So just kind of break it down, how are we preparing for a case? I know you're turnkey, essentially, but just kind of walk us through that.
Yeah, so like we were talking earlier, this time of the year is what we really need to start focusing on. If you know that you're holding on to your portfolio, you're not selling it, then start looking at things and start walking your properties. Have your property managers walk the properties, have your tenants take pictures. We ended up doing a text line during COVID, and it was the best thing we ever had because the tenants were obviously in lockdown, so the landlords weren't going in, property managers weren't going in, but we could get the tenant to take a picture of the bad toilet, the sheetrock that was messed up, anything like it. It pissed off some of the landlords, but at the end, we lowered their taxes, so it was a wash. They need to take care of their properties, but that's just part of it. And that was great. We had an interaction that we'd never really had, and we're getting a lot of information. And this wasn't just residential. This was on commercial buildings, office buildings, warehouses, anything that's out there. Right now is a big time. Gathering the information from the property owners is sometimes the biggest struggle we have. Y'all come in, y'all say, hey, we've got this portfolio, we want it reduced, and our property tax bills just came in October, first part of November, and you're upset. Great. We'd love to help you in 2023, and we can. And in some cases, we can even help you from 2022 standpoint. Even though you missed the regular protest deadline in May, there are some protests that we can still do we have to get them filed by the end of January of 2023 to help you for 2022. And it's a very small window of what we can do for you, but it's something we can do if it meets all the criteria. But January we start hammering it. We've got to handle anything that y'all have from Joe the plumber that's got 5 pickup trucks, because those guys are paying property tax. The guys that have an airplane, they're paying property tax. The guys that are leasing from you in your retail center or your medical center, they're being charged with business personal property taxes as well. So we're doing renditions at that time of the year. We're handling all of the equipment. Restaurants, medical facilities, anything and everything gets taxed. Nobody gets free meal. And then we start working and getting the protest ready. We usually start our protest before the deadline because we're an agency. We're not waiting until the very last minute to file it. We are actually filing protests on our repeat clients. We start those usually about the end of February, 1st of March, sometime in that time frame, because we actually start protesting, doing hearings in sometimes late March, early April, and y'all are still waiting on values to come out and things like that. And we've already got values, and we're moving through it a little bit faster than everybody else because we're dealing with thousands and thousands and thousands of cases versus your 40 properties or 50 properties or whatever it is. We're already moving through it and helping you get back with your property management team and know how to assess what your property taxes are going to be for this year and assess whether we need to file arbitration or if we need to file litigation. And there's 2 different manners of how to handle that. Everybody wants to come in. They said they want to file a lawsuit against the appraisal district. That is really great in theory, and it's a wonderful idea in a perfect world when you watch whatever great TV late at night and they file a lawsuit and they got it settled. The problem that they didn't tell you is that Harris County is on a backlog of about 3 years. If any of y'all are voting in Harris County, you may want to pay attention to that. You should have really paid attention the other day when the 2 commissioners didn't show up to court the other day and helped y'all not pay more on property taxes by not voting with the other parties. That was going to increase the hell out of your property taxes. If all 5 of them would have been there and there would have been a quorum, you would have been screaming more and hurting more as property owners in Harris County. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to make this political. I'm just making this a reality. But nevertheless, you file a lawsuit in Harris County, you still have to pay the property taxes by January the 30th. And you're at their mercy at that point to get settled, go to trial, do whatever you've got to do, and pay a ton of money to go there. And then you wait for them to write you a check back for the refund. And it's a great saying of the checks in the mail. They have time frame to do it, but it's about getting, if it's over a certain dollar amount, it has to get approved by Commissioner's Court, and it takes somewhere between 6 to 7 months to get your refund. And run to the bank with the check and make sure it cashes. You know,
Only 3-year backlog?
We've got some of them. Travis County's at about a 4-year backlog right now.
Wow.
Travis is the slowest in the state, and they have no reason to move. They don't. They're not going to. But Harris is at right about 3-year. We've got quite a few that are 3 years behind right now, that are a 3-year case rolling from 19, 20, 21, 20, and now we're filing 22. So we'll have 4 years on some of them. We try to settle them. We do not try to go to trial. It is not for the property owners. You're walking down there, you are a very rich person, is going to be the first thing that happens.
We're all rich, yeah.
None of you have any debt on your properties at all, I'm sure. Every one of you is super wealthy, and you paid cash for every piece of property you've got, and you have no debt. You're not paying a property manager. You don't pay insurance. Everything's free and clear in the mind of some of these people that are down there. And the problem that they see is that you're a rich person because you own property, and you're really not their favorite person to see, even though you're paying their salary. and their benefits and their retirement and everything else. It's a very saddening experience to see how property owners are actually treated in a lot of counties from a judicial standpoint. So we typically try to settle. I try not to go down there because it is a waste of money. You will spend $30,000 to $50,000 to go to a trial in Harris County, and you do not get to, even though it says that you can sue and get your attorney's fees back, there is only one case that anybody can talk about that's happened in the last 15 years where somebody got a partial amount of their attorney fees back. So we try to stay away from that as much as possible as far as really getting down there and getting into the crypts with them. But arbitration seems to work really well. The comptroller's office started that about mid-2000, 2003, 2005, somewhere in there, where you could do arbitration for a property up to $5 million, and it moves so smooth. It is the smoothest thing in the world to file an arbitration and to get a reduction back, to get things where it needs to be. The biggest thing that we saw this year was for 2021, a lot of y'all were buying single family or buying anything. You saw that there was, or had anybody that was buying something, it was going for above list price. Mm-hmm. In a lot of areas. It didn't matter where the market was. They listed it for 100, they sold it for 180. So the districts were putting in, Montgomery County, Fort Bend County, Travis County, Harris County, everybody was putting in a time value adjustment. And the time value adjustment is a great math problem that no one in this room will be able to explain to me, because I've been trying to learn it for a long time. I've been in the real estate business for 26 years, and I still can't figure out the time value adjustment rule for any county in the state of Texas, because they're all a variable based on whatever they feel they need to raise the value to. And so what we'd have is you go in, you'd buy a house in November of 2021. You paid $300,000 for it. Well, you did absolutely nothing to it but buy it, move your family into it, and away you went. Well, the new value comes out later on the next year, and that house is now at $475 because of time value adjustment. Well, you have a closing statement. You had a willing seller and an able buyer, and that's the terms of a purchase. And they wouldn't take the values. So we were having to do a lot of our properties that were new purchases, because there was a lot of deals done last year, a tremendous amount of deals done in 2021. And we had to take a lot of those to arbitration just to get the values of what the people had paid for them, because that's truly what the tax code says, is that, you set the market price on the property when you purchase that property, not what the 50 comps around you did, but what you purchased it for. So if you bought it for $300, then that was a purchase price. Now, it's hard for me to go in there that you bought it for $300 and you want me to get it down to $250. Now, if you'd have bought it in January of 2021 for $300 and the market just crashed, then that's a different deal. But when you buy it at the end of the year, you pretty much set the value for the property. And so that's a lot of what we saw.
So the other side of this coin is that property values have gone up.
They have gone up.
Trey, rent has gone up.
Yeah, rent continues to climb.
We're seeing on a monthly basis or quarterly basis?
I would say definitely quarterly for sure.
Gotcha. And you also work with Section 8, right?
Yes, we do.
Yep. So I don't want you to tell everyone the worst place to work with Section 8, but what's the best office you've worked with?
I really like Baytown.
It's the Baytown Section 8.
Yeah.
Excellent. And they're fair on the rents?
Yes, they're generous.
Really?
Yeah.
It's good to know. Excellent. So values go up, rents go up. We got a little more breathing room over the next few years until those two guys are back at us with the taxes and the insurance and that's going on, and then hopefully rent goes up a little bit more. And that's that cycle that we as landlords go through. It's kind of funny because before we buy it, we want the highest possible valuation for our mortgage, right? And then once we buy it, we don't want to look at that number anymore. We want that number to come back down so that we can absolutely make sure that we pay the least amount of taxes. And then, of course, when we go to insure it, well, what's it really going to take to replace? So back to that replacement cost real quick before we take some Q&A here. Are you using a general per square foot cost for replacement?
No, we use, as David mentioned, a Marshall & Swift, and then we've also got a third party that we're using, and it's new, and I'm using two of them because I want to see how they're rating up against each other. But we're putting in the details. We have a conversation really about the finishes in the house. Of course, the age and square footage matter. The roof type. We put in quite a bit of detail. Most of the Marshall & Swifts make some assumptions based on the square footage and the year built and the zip code. I like to go a little bit deeper than that because I found that a lot of theirs are coming back higher than they need to be. And again, I don't mind insuring somebody for 120%, I guess, of replacement cost if they really have a reason for doing that. But you are never going to get a check from an insurance company for 120% of replacement cost. So we want to be real with that number and get it within reason. And also, you got to be able to sleep at night to know that if a house is catastrophically, there's a catastrophic loss, then you're going to get a check that can mentally let you have peace and sleep at night and put it back to where you need it.
Okay, I don't mind being the dumbest guy in the room. What is Marshall & Swift? Sounds like TBS.
I'm sorry.
Two ragtag girls making their way in the big city. Marshall & Swift.
Marshall & Swift is just a replacement cost. It's a third-party vendor where they calculate the replacement cost on any property throughout the country, and they're using the zip code, building cost, square footage, year built, and then what the assumptions are is the finishes and ceiling heights and all these different things. If you have a 20-foot ceiling height throughout some of these houses, that's a little bit different than an 8-foot ceiling height. Things like crown molding. If you've got 4-inch baseboards, that's one thing. If you've got a house full of 10-inch baseboards and crown molding, that's a little bit different. And so we just want to be aware so that we're properly insuring you and not lowballing it or going much higher. Often, I see more going higher than I do lower, almost across the board. There's a few carriers out there that like to send letters that tell you that you can insure your house for about 50% of what is reality. And when you start digging into it, it's the valuation that they have, and they've rated it on the very best scenario with the lowest market value that they can figure out how to do it. Yeah. You've got 4 sticks and 4 walls, and that's about it. And so that's not good either, because you get into issues that you don't have enough insurance to rebuild or to pay off the money against it, the lender.
Hey guys, I want to thank you very much for joining us at this another very successful Red Talk. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your answers. I think we're well informed tonight, so we want to thank you guys for joining us. Let's give them all a big round of applause. All right, why don't we take a little 10 minutes, and you guys, sure you've got lots of connections. You want to get business cards, you want to do all that stuff.